Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. Obviously, as you guys can see up on the screen, we have a giant Nemesis behind me right now. That's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk a little bit about Fnatic, a little bit about their mid lane situation, a little bit about Nemesis' situation headed into the summer split, and really headed into the rest of his career as well, going into 2022. I think there is really a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, with finals just wrapping up this past weekend, the spring split is now over. And yes, that means getting ready for MSI, but we still have a couple of weeks to get ready for MSI. There's going to be plenty of MSI content, plenty of MSI videos. Don't you guys worry. We're going to be talking about Mad Lions. We're going to be talking about Cloud9, all the representatives, all the groups and everything. But also, for every other team in the LEC and every other team in the LCS, this is a little mini offseason. This is a little mini break between spring and summer split to maybe make some roster changes, maybe shuffle some things around, but at the least get mentally prepared, start game planning for how things are going to go differently in the summer split, and how they're hopefully going to be on top of the standings and not Mad Lions and not Cloud9. So today, we're talking about the mid lane situation for Fnatic, but before we get into that, I just want to mention real quick, if you guys have not already, please take a second and click that subscribe button really quick. I would appreciate it so much. You guys are already here watching one of my videos already, so why not subscribe? Why not keep yourself up to date on all my latest content, all my newest videos coming out, because we have tons of awesome ones coming your way. There's going to be some rumors, there's going to be some big roster moves in between the splits, and again, MSI is right around the corner. Also, click that like button really quick. That would be absolutely awesome. It really helps me out the YouTube algorithm. With that being said, let's get right into this. So, talking about the mid lane situation, obviously Fnatic this past offseason made two really big roster changes. One, they decided to kick Nemesis and bring in Niski, and two, Reckless decided to kick them, head to G2, and Fnatic brought in Upset. Now, Fnatic, again, in last summer's split, they were not necessarily amazing, but they ended up having a good playoff run. They ended up going to Worlds. They ended up having top esports down 2-0 in the quarterfinals. They were one win away from making the semifinals. Obviously, top esports ended up sweeping them, reverse sweeping them, winning 3-2, but still, Fnatic had a lot of good things going, even though they maybe didn't have the best regular season in the summer. But again, Fnatic decided to make some moves. They saw Nemesis as a weak point on their team, as a lot of other people did as well. He definitely had a down split. He definitely had a down playoffs. He definitely had a down Worlds, and that's kind of what led to Fnatic making this change. And of those two changes, Niski was brought in and Upset was brought in. There's kind of mixed opinions about Niski. I don't think he had that great of a year. I would rate him as a very middle of the pack mid laner in the LEC right now, maybe 6th, 5th in that area. I think there is absolutely at least four mid laners that had better showings than him in the spring split. But then on Upset on the other side, a lot of people have him as one of the top 3 or 4 AD carries. I mean, he was an MVP candidate. He was really a beast for Fnatic this past split. Now, obviously, he's replacing the guy who actually did win the MVP in Reckless, so maybe that was still a little bit of a downgrade. And I think most people would say that, especially how much Reckless meant to Fnatic and this team. But overall, those were the two big changes. Upset had a pretty successful year and had a pretty successful split, and some people would say Niski did too, but obviously I think overall most people are saying that Upset had a much better split than Niski. Fnatic had tons of other problems as well. Bwipo had a down split, Selfmade had a down split, Hylissang had a down split, so it was all crazy and chaos, but it at least does have people talking about, like, did Nemesis deserve to get replaced? Was the replacement a success? Are they going to be calling him back up now? What's going on? And kind of the main reason I want to talk about this is because there was this clip from LS that was kind of blowing up. Obviously, it's a meme. Obviously, it's a joke, but it was pretty funny. So we can watch this real quick and then kind of get into some of the numbers, get into some of the stats, and actually talk a little bit more about what's going on. Because obviously, we know how LS feels about this situation. Hold up. I don't know what just happened. We got to refresh real quick. I had this open on my computer for a few days, so I think it's what messed up. All right, just adding to the suspense. And obviously this was just really, really funny. Again, it was obviously a joke, but it did get people talking. And again, people think that Niski overall had a pretty good, pretty decent spring split. I think is kind of, I mean, it's not what a lot of people are saying. When I did a poll of who Fnatic should replace, Niski was actually the second most voted player and just a couple of votes behind Whippo. So there is a lot of people out there who think Niski didn't do that great, and maybe he is very, very replaceable, especially in the LEC this year, where mid lane was kind of a down position. You know, mid lane in the LEC is usually one of the biggest and best positions, and there's still a ton of good LEC mid laners, but the LEC brought in a ton of young guys this year. There was so many new faces. It wasn't kind of the old gauntlet of like the old just class after class after class mid laner. I mean, there was still the top mid laners are just as good. You know, Caps, Humanoid, Larson, still an absolute beast, but the bottom was a little bit weaker this year. There was a lot of European Regional League mid laners coming in, and some of them were solid, but some of them were not that great. So Niski was playing in a little bit softer LEC mid lane this year, and I still don't think he necessarily looked amazing. But then also in the playoffs, I don't think he looked great. You know, whether I think he looked good in the regular season or whatever, I think he looked, and then even a step worse in the playoffs. And when you're Fnatic, when you're a team that wants to compete for titles, wants to go to Worlds, yada, 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 the playoffs are a little bit more important, and that is where historically Fnatic has stepped up. And Niski, I know people were kind of memeing on the Twisted Fate game and stuff like that. He did not really step up in the playoffs, and for me, that's always been a big criticism of mine towards Niski, where, you know, we saw the collapse in summer last year. We've seen him perform at Worlds before, and that has not been pretty. And then now he's had a bad playoffs with Fnatic. It seems like a guy who doesn't step up in the big games, doesn't step up in the big moments. And again, I don't want that on one of the top teams. But anyway, taking a look at what actually happened in the past couple of splits. So if we date this back to last spring split, you know, comparing spring split to spring split, obviously it's not the most recent split for Fnatic, so maybe this isn't super fair, but in the last spring split, Fnatic did go 13-5 in the regular season. They were 2 games back behind G2. In the playoffs, they were able to beat OG in the first series 3-1, and then they were able to go on and beat Mad Lions in the semifinals 3-0 before losing to G2 3-0 in the finals. But obviously they still made it to finals. This was overall a good split for them. They finished second in the regular season. They finished second in the playoffs. Not too much you can complain about there. Then in the summer split, this is obviously the most recent split where Fnatic did go 9-9, very similarly to what they did in the spring split of this year. This is obviously, I'm looking at these because these are with Nemesis, the last 2 Fnatic splits with Nemesis in the mid lane. Fnatic went 9-9. They were able to 3-0 Rogue in the first round of the playoffs and then beat G2 3-2 in the semis before then going on and losing to G2 again. Now, obviously, again, this was a massive, massive success. They finished 4th in the regular season. They ended up making it to finals. They ended up qualifying for Worlds. They completed a lot of their goals. Obviously, they would have liked to win an LEC title in one of these 2 splits, but they were never considered the best team in the LEC, really, in either of these splits. People didn't really have the highest expectations for them. Overall, these were both very, very good. Now, obviously, fast forward to 2021, where this is what happened. Fnatic finished 9-9 again, just like they did in the summer split. But this time, after 3-1ing SK, who went 8-10 in the regular season, you know, they were seen as a very, very weak team. They end up getting 3-0 swept by Schalke, who went 9-9 and was a very, very up and down team throughout the LEC split. This was a very, very bad loss for Fnatic, and this is why people are really starting to question a lot of what's going on with a lot of these different Fnatic members. You know, the future doesn't look necessarily bright for like Whippo or Hylissang on this team. It seems like Fnatic will probably be moving on from them after this next split because both of their contracts do expire. The contract of Selfmade expires as well, so all of a sudden Fnatic's whole roster and the 3 guys who have been on this team, their futures are really up in the air all of a sudden. We have no idea what's going to happen. And then you also have Niski and Upset, who are the new guys they brought in, and they can build a team around those guys, or maybe they want to just completely blow up the team and start all the way over, start all the way fresh. You know, maybe they decide to keep Upset because he's been a beast, but would they necessarily have to keep Niski? You know, I don't know. When we look at the stats comparing these 2 players, this is the summer split of 2020. This is obviously the most recent split for Nemesis, and the split that kind of got him replaced. He was very, very rough. He did not have a good year, and that's totally fair, and I get why Fnatic did decide to replace him. And at the time, I wasn't even saying it was a bad decision. I was saying I was fine with Fnatic moving on from Nemesis. A lot of people wanted, if you date back to last offseason, you can look at the comments on my video. A lot of people wanted Fnatic to bring back Nemesis. A lot of people were kind of shocked and surprised that they were scapegoating Nemesis, even though he had, you know, 1 bad split or 1 bad Worlds or whatever. He was a young player with a lot of promise, a lot of talent. People wanted to bring him back, but obviously Fnatic decided not to do that after this split. He ended up with a 3.1 KDA, so kind of, you know, towards the bottom in the LEC. As far as average kills, he went, his average score was 2.7, 2.4, and 4.6. He had decent CS per minute, kind of middle of the pack, decent gold per minute, top 4 there. He had absolutely abysmal kill participation, 56.2%. I mean, that is just terrible. As far as damage share, he was kind of towards the bottom. Damage per minute, he was kind of towards the bottom as well. And then his laning stats were not great either. Gold differential at 15, minus 191. CSD, he was minus 3 at 15. And then XP differential, he was dead last in the league at minus 207. So again, not great stats. He definitely continued this in the playoffs. He definitely continued this at Worlds. His stats were never that good. He wasn't looking that good. He was a lot of the times getting dominated. There was a lot of mid diff going on. So that's obviously why they brought in Niski. But my thing with Niski was, this is another guy who is not lane dominant, is not going to put up great stats, is not going to be a carry, is not going to be a main threat for your team. So it's kind of just replacing a guy that has a lot of the same issues, and that, you know, I get it. They thought that Niski was going to roam around and make a ton of plays and really be a facilitative guy for this big pop-off Fnatic roster that had a carry in the top lane, a carry in the jungle, a carry at AD carry, a playmaking support. But obviously, with how it worked out with Whippo not being a big carry this split, Self-Made really not being a big carry this split, it was really, really hard. But also, the meta didn't necessarily lean towards those roaming champions. It was a lot of control mages in mid lane. And I was saying from the beginning that if mid lane control mages are the meta and they are what's best, that Fnatic is going to struggle. You can look back to my videos from like November or December. I've been saying that, and that's exactly what happened. Fnatic had a very rough split, and they had a terrible playoffs. And a lot of it is because, yeah, Niski, it really handicaps you as a team when he is your mid laner. He can play one style, and he can play that style very, very well, but that's it. That's all he's going to do. So these are actually the LEC Spring 2021 splits for Niski, since we're going to be kind of comparing them to what Nemesis did. 3.2 KDA, average score 2.43 and 7.2. So overall, similar KDA. Niski's dying a little bit more, but he's getting a little bit more assists. CS per minute, Niski was dead last in the LEC. So gold per minute, he's going to be kind of low as well. Third to last in the LEC, sitting at 384. His kill participation was also really, really bad. Second to last in the league, but it was actually higher than Nemesis's. But my thing here is that Niski was brought in to be the facilitative mid laner. He was brought in to be the guy that is setting up plays for Whippo, setting up plays for Selfmade, setting up plays for Upset. He's sacrificing, you know, he had low CS per minute. He's sacrificing for the team. He's sacrificing so that other people can make plays, but you have to be enabling those plays. But obviously, when you look at this kill participation of 61.4%, he wasn't doing that. He was not doing. He was sacrificing CS, sacrificing gold, and then not making any plays. He was having a not great KDA. I don't get it. As far as damage per minute, damage share, he was dead last in the LEC. Damage per minute, he was a little bit higher than Nemesis. Or I think him and Nemesis were actually pretty similar, 455. So similar damage per minutes. So, overall, I think they're very, very comparable players. Lane stats, a lot of the same stuff. Niski was pretty close to the bottom in terms of CSD at 15. Pretty close to the bottom in terms of XP at 15. And gold differential, he was minus 129. So, when you look at these two guys, a lot of the same issues. Both of them were struggling in lane. Both of them have low damage. Both of them have low kill participation. Nemesis was a little bit better in terms of generating gold. Niski was a little bit better in terms of actual kill participation on the team. But neither one of them was good enough. But for some reason, Nemesis is seen as the scapegoat. Nemesis is seen as the guy, who got replaced and he was bad and people were flaming him or whatever. And all of a sudden, Niski's getting a pass for having a very, very similar split. I hope all the people who are hyping up Niski right now are also on the train that Nemesis shouldn't have been replaced. Because if you're saying that Nemesis should have been replaced, but Niski was a top 3 mid laner this year, then you're not even watching the games. You're not even looking at what's going on, because that is just absolutely not true. At the end of the day, these guys are very, very comparable. So do I think Fnatic is calling up Nemesis, begging for him back? No, not at all, and I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, Nemesis is not coming back to Fnatic, but I think Fnatic did go out and make a big move for essentially the same type of player, a player with the exact same issues, and a player that overall had a very, very similar split. So if you thought Nemesis was the issue, going and getting Niski to be his replacement doesn't make much sense to me, and we really saw Fnatic be about the exact same. They went 9-9 in summer, they went 9-9 in spring. The only difference here is that they had a much worse playoffs, and I'm not saying that's because of Nemesis or because of Niski or whatever, because obviously I think Fnatic as a whole changed a lot in these two splits, but I know that people are talking really, really good about Niski right now, despite not having a good split. and people were not really doing that same for Nemesis. My only thing here is, though, that we have seen Nemesis have better splits than this. Yes, summer split, Nemesis did not look good. His stats were bad. The eye test was bad. He was getting, gapped all the time in regular season, in playoffs, at Worlds. But in spring, he was decent. In splits before for Fnatic, he was pretty damn good. That's why he was the Fnatic mid laner. People were hyped up and excited for him. I don't think one bad split makes him that bad when this from Niski is kind of what we've seen for the last couple of splits. He did not have a good summer split for Cloud9. Now he hasn't had a good spring split for Fnatic. I think this is more where Niski is, where I think Nemesis has more potential to actually bounce back. I don't think one bad split means you are a terrible player. I don't think that defines your level as a player. So that is kind of my one problem between these two, and why I think Fnatic would have probably been better off with Nemesis in the mid lane. But I get it. You had a bad split. You had a bad showing at Worlds. Mid lane was the issue. You wanted to go out and make a change. I totally understand that, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but this is kind of the reality that things maybe didn't necessarily work out how they thought they were going to, and maybe, LS is right that Fnatic is going to be calling Nemesis up. But that is pretty much it for this video today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for watching. I would really appreciate it if you dropped a like on the video. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm a ton. Leave a comment down below. What do you think Fnatic is doing in the mid lane? Do you think Nemesis would have done better for Fnatic this split, worse for them? You think they would have made it further in the playoffs? You think they would have gotten knocked out sooner? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace!